everyone, and welcome back to the 16 millimeter film crew. I'm Cindy.
And I'm Dale.
You can watch us on YouTube. You can like and comment on our YouTube videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can listen to us everywhere podcasts are found at 16 millimeter film crew podcast. And you can visit us on our website at www.16millimeterfilmcrew.com. This week we watched We Live in Time, directed by John Crowley. Almut and Tobias are brought together by a surprise encounter that changes their lives. As they embark on a path challenged by the limits of time, they learn to cherish each moment of their unconventional love story. This film stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. So, Dale, what were your thoughts about this one?
This is another one of those non-linear edited films, which I think is good. But yeah, no, this film left me feeling a lot. Like,
Hmm.
um, like of course, the age of the characters is very relatable. Or I think I'm in that bracket more so than you, and the whole issue of finding somebody at this age is really rough. So I get that point. And then the issue of, having a loved one have cancer and that whole process. Of course, my father had cancer at one point. I've had multiple family members die of cancer. So the film had me like in like a constant nonstop like wave of emotion, you know. But yeah, I think those are like the best pictures like that leave a strong, powerful feeling when you're watching it. So I did beyond even that, I love the performances of Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh in this picture as well. So
Yeah, I was wondering how you felt about it since, like, because you had a personal history with that subject matter. So I was wondering like how you felt about the film. But for me, because I haven't had that particular illness like come into my life in terms of my family members or people who I am close to, I don't think it really mattered. I think that that subject matter, regardless of whether like you've personally been touched by it or not, is always gonna like hit in a certain way, especially if it's done well.
mm,
Um, and I think that they, at least in terms of like a person receiving that news and the treatment and all that, I think they did a really good job of portraying all of that. And like
mhm,
this is an interesting movie because going into it, I thought it was like gonna be like a really sweet like love story, which it definitely was. I think that Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield just have amazing, whatever, call it chemistry, call it like a natural bond, whatever, however you want to classify it. Like they have that, like I believed 100% that these two people were like in this long-term relationship. And um, the little girl who they got to play their daughter was so cute. So like it
mm,
was just really sweet. Um, and heartbreaking because of this woman who Florence plays, who is literally running out of time because she has cancer. And the non-linear way that they structured it, um, I think it was interesting, and I definitely like it's an interesting device to employ in terms of like how you want to tell a certain story. Like last week when we watched the Outrun, the way that they did it was it's almost like you are living inside of this woman's brain because it's not like she's not because of her addiction, it's like memories and moments are scattered. And so you're also piecing together things as she's kind of piecing together stuff,
mm,
which makes a lot of sense. And for this one, I think that on one point in particular, it hits really well. And like that non-linear way of telling the story actually makes a lot of sense for that one moment. I don't know if it's like overall how useful it was in terms of like letting us like see the progression of this relationship over after a while it kind of I don't know if it really did anything for me particularly. um I think the only time it really hit for me was when in the beginning she said she doesn't want children, but we already know that she has a kid, so it's like, okay, well, how do we get there? And so the reveal that she not only had cancer but beat it, and the reason why her cancer came back was because she chose to hold on to one of her ovaries so she could have a child. And that to me was like, whoa, that really like that was a gut punch.
Mm,
because it's like, of course, like you want your daughter, what a blessing, but also like now you're not going to be there for the rest of her growing up.
mm,
So it is this like really interesting, that was a really interesting dynamic that I wish they could kind of got more into. I think towards the latter half of the film, it was more focusing on the fact that because she had this illness, it was like, I need to be a chef, I need to win this prize, like I need to do this in order to feel like I've accomplished something before my time runs out. Um, versus like focusing maybe on like what her time running out would be like for her family, like for her husband and for her child.
yeah.
I kind of wanted more of that, but I understand why they took it in the other direction.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this is my understanding of it. I did like the back and forth of it because you can see as their relationship gets more intense and more intimate, their priorities and their dynamics in relationship change, which is also a good thing. You're never going to be stagnant in a relationship. Like a stagnant relationship is a sign of a lack of growth, you know. And when he finally spills his guts after dating her for like 2 weeks, he's like, "Oh, I'm falling in love with you," and then they get mad about him saying, "I want to have kids," and he goes, "You know what? I need to stop worrying about the future. I need to focus in the moment," and that comes back again later on where she's like, "I want to spend the 6 good months with you. I want to enjoy the moment." You know, they both learned that little push and pull, no one to give, one to take. Um, and I mean, this is the male thinking of me. I don't know what it's like to be a woman and have to grasp the thought of the idea of not wanting a kid or having a kid. But I do feel like that was the impetus of before she had the option of not wanting a kid. But then when the ovarian cancer came, she's like, "Oh, I don't even get a say in it." And that also
Right.
then drives her to say, "All right, cool, I want to have a kid now. I want the opportunity to have one." You know, so but yeah, I love like the performances between Andrew and Florence. Like you're right, they exude this natural chemistry. I feel like whenever they're the two actors, I think nowadays who naturally exude chemistry with whoever they're working with
Hmm.
for some reason. Like you see that now
Yeah.
with Andrew and the chicken shop girl. He just
Yes, Amelia.
naturally playful. Like I feel like Andrew could just walk up to anybody and like
Yeah, he has a riz.
finesse the pants off anybody, like even a straight dude. Like
Hmm.
I feel like that in Florence is Florence. And the thing about them as actors is yes, they're known for being very emotive and very expressive. Like of course Florence's crying face, which has been from Midsommar, is stuck in everybody's head. When she's sad, she's like really can get into it. The same with Andrew, like same way. But it's also I think this movie also has a lot of quiet moments where dialogue isn't said, but it's just the expressions on the actor's face, which, like I said, both of them are known for really loud expressions and emoting with their face, but it's the quiet ones that really showcase their talent. Like when he's trying to propose to her and he can't form the words, and then she just reads his proposal. That scene was so perfect because you see the shift in her face and her eyes and all that, which I thought was really beautiful. Like the funniest thing for me was when they were trying to talk to their daughter about her being sick, and then the musician, the guy who does magic comes in. And he's
Hmm.
trying to kill the whole vibe, and it's just the awkwardness of being a parent, trying to shoot this guy away and he doesn't listen, and they try to basically tell him fuck off, and
Hmm.
try to ground their kid. But yeah, I love their performances in this so much.
Yeah, Andrew and Florence hard carried this movie. Like, to be honest, this movie was kind of okay for me. Like, I guess it wasn't really what I was expecting it to be,
Yeah.
but they hard carried this movie. Like, their performances and their um chemistry together was just, it kind of makes up for everything else that I think in some places were definitely lacking, like the writing. I don't know how strong that was, but they made the best of it and they made me believe everything. So like, I don't know. I'm not walking away from this one complaining as much because I feel like they really pulled it out.
Mm,
Like, and I think what's interesting is the maybe disconnect from like how some audiences might feel from it based and from how Andrew and Florence felt making the movie.
Mm.
because I was watching their interviews and like they really cared about this movie.
Yeah,
Like they put everything into it. They were really sad when it ended. And also Andrew had personally lost his mother. I'm not sure if it was from cancer, but
yeah,
from some illness recently. So like all of that was very fresh while he was making it. So I feel like that to me is kind of enough. Like I don't really need the movie to be like the greatest thing I've ever seen because honestly it's kind of like a rom-com, just a little bit sad. Like it's like a more adult Fault in Our Stars. Like it's like it's dealing with the same subject matter. And also, I'm gonna just put it up. Fault in Our Stars is a great movie.
yeah.
I thought it was fantastic and it handled the subject matter great. So like no shade to Fault in Our Stars. I think it's an amazing movie. I just mean like in terms of more mature themes like starting families and being in a serious adult relationship, like they did that fantastically. But I think that like because the actors cared so deeply about this movie, it kind of makes me care about it too. Like
Yeah.
I'm just like, yes, I feel you. Like if you had an amazing experience working on this, then that's on actually all I want. Like even though I'm a viewer and I'm not a part of it, because I think I care about the actors and I'm glad that the actors have a great had a great experience because that's not always the case. When it comes to filmmaking, like sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But I think the fact that like they had such a great time making the movie and were so invested in it, and seemed to have a very similar way of approaching the work. Like I'm just like,
Mm.
yeah, I will support you guys no matter what. Honestly, that's the reason why I wanted to see the film. I was like, Andrew and Florence, say no more. I will watch it. Like that. So I think also just their own personas as we know it in public, because obviously we don't know them, but things what that they've put forward in us watching them for over these couple of years, like it makes you invested, like it makes you want to care. And then also I think that there were a lot of beautiful moments in this film. Like however I might have thought this film was lacking, I think that there were a lot of great moments. Like
Mm.
I thought this movie was funny. The birthing scene in the gas station bathroom never could be me. Like I would just be like, sorry, girly, you're staying in there until I get to a hospital. Like I just no.
Yeah.
Um, but it was such a well done scene. I really thought it was good. Also, when she shaves her head and the daughter is a part of it and they're collecting it in the little box, like all of that was really sweet. Like I just thought it was like a really sweet, genuine movie from people who like genuinely cared.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's all I need. Like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and I think what it was, I think you mentioned Andrew Garfield. I think his mother did like she did die of pancreatic cancer. I think he
Okay.
said it was during the filming of The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and it was before Tick Tick Boom. But
Yeah.
I think that's his involvement with him is also a form of catharsis for him
Yeah.
as well. Because, like I said, I can relate to that very heavily. Um, but yeah, it's one of those projects you see when actors and talent are completely 100% invested in it. The performances they put out, and it's really beautiful. Like even as like a person without children, but at a certain age where you're thinking about your future and stuff like that,
Hmm.
I could also understand Florence Pugh's character saying, "I want to leave something." Like even me myself right now, thinking, what legacy am I leaving behind? Like that's
Right.
a permanent. Like these are no matter where you are in life or whatever you're doing, these are all thoughts everybody has at a certain point,
Yeah.
and I think that's what adds to the personal feel or the personal emotion you get from watching this picture.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I felt everything that they were saying, I felt. I was like, yeah, these are like real things that you have to contend with. It's like when he comes to the apartment and he's like upset about the fact that she like might not want kids. Like that's real because like he's getting up there. Like he wants it. That was the issue with his last marriage. That's
Yeah.
why that didn't work out. Like the love and the sex and all that is great, but then it's like it always comes back to like, okay, but what do you actually want and what
Yeah.
do you see for your future? And like that's gonna dictate your next decision. So it's like I like that they didn't skip out on like showing the importance
Hmm.
of those things. And I think in rom-coms they usually do gloss over the fact, like, well, actually, are we gonna work if you want
Hmm.
this and I want that? but we're just gonna like meet up at the Brooklyn Bridge and be in love. Like it's like no, like we have
Yeah.
to talk about it. So I'm glad that they did it. When he bum rushes the baby shower, I was like, this is not the time for you to be doing this. But okay. Because if it was my baby shower, I'd be like, can y'all please leave? Like this is not your moment.
Hey, look,
But
as a guy and a low-key hopeless romantic, I'm like, look, hey, that low-key takes balls. Because I think every dude has that thought in their head, like, yo, I want to impress this girl so much with this big ass public display to play affection, and but then you punk out, like it, like those things take
don't
like,
do it.
and it's also that's the thing, it's like you don't want to embarrass her, and it also takes massive balls to do. But yeah, I also love the fact that they spent time focusing on her career and how it
Yeah.
affects her. Like, and because you don't really get to see that side in film or in real life of women being headstrong, and they kind of get put in. They kind of say, "Oh, my career has to take the back seat." We just know he works for Weetabix. We don't know on what level,
Hmm.
and you see her have to wrestle. Managing her career with childbirth and also dealing with cancer, how she overcomes that. I do wish we saw a bit more of him having to say, "I need to sacrifice my career to support her goals as being a chef for our child and her cancer as well." The only time we get to
Yeah.
see that is, when she gets to pick up their daughter and he has to rush from work. And we don't even really see him rushing from work. We are told that happens. So,
Yeah, and I feel like in that scene in particular is where I mean the writing was kind of shaky just because like we should have seen more of like how this incident might be more indicative of like her pushing her career a little ahead of maybe like the immediate need of like taking care of the kid.
yeah.
And the dynamic there was there. It was like there was tension there and then we kind of dropped it. And
Yeah.
I don't love that. I don't think that that was like a a good way to depict like the real life conflict that you would be having around something like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish that they spent more time investing in those moments versus like watching her train for her competition.
Mhm.
I think some of the timing that was like allocated was just needed to be allocated differently. So like we can
Mhm.
get more moments of that. Also, like their journey to having a child, since that's like a huge thing, that was put into a montage. Not sure how I felt about that one either. So I don't know. Like there were just some moments where I was just like missed opportunities. I was like, I feel like we could have dug more deeper into
But
this relationship.
I think that's hard to do. And this is for me. I don't mind doing that, but I know for you though, you don't like movies when they pass 2 hours. So I think it's also they have to wrestle with the runtime of audience attention and how much we can fit in a certain window. And it's a hard thing to do as well.
No, it is. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it's easy. And
Yeah.
honestly, if it was 2 hours, I would still watch it.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't know. It's interesting because like there are shows that do this very well. Like if you watch something like Normal People or like when it's like a day in the life when you're just watching people do stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a straight narrative. It's like we're just watching people like live their lives, which is kind of what this movie is. Um, it is about picking your moments, right? If you do it in a TV show, it's easier because you have more time. But like if you're doing it in a film, it is going to be a little bit more difficult. Um, I don't know. It honestly, I don't think it really matters. I feel like as long as to me it's like as long as the kids had fun, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I do kind of wish we got more in terms of like their journey to parenthood,
Yeah.
what the relationship is like now that her cancer has reemerged. Like I kind of wanted more of that because the cooking competition wasn't like it was fine, but it
Yeah.
was like it wasn't giving me the drama that I love. So I was just like,
But those in an hour in a two on a what an hour 45-minute film, they only had like two arguments through their whole relationship that we saw.
yeah.
So, and
And
that
they don't even
was
have to argue, but it's
yeah.
also like the IVF thing I thought was super interesting. Like I wanted to kind of be more into that where it's like they try naturally, that doesn't work. So we have to try IVF. Is that really working? Oh, yeah, it worked. Okay, great. So now we're pregnant. Like, but then that I think the issue with that is that it's also non-linear, right? So everything is kind of going back and forth. So you don't get to spend as much time with that because you're jumping to a scene maybe in the future.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of
I mean,
it's a little
a,
hmm.
a scene I probably would have liked because we only see the argument of them saying, "Oh, you don't want to have kids," and then the argument of her focusing on the on the cooking competition. I think a
Mm.
good argument probably would have to had in this movie would have been, I know you wanted to give birth, but do you like? I don't know. I'm wondering if her character also in her push for her cooking career at the end was also due to some kind of deep-seated resentment of my cancers here because I chose to have a child. You
We
know,
could have explored that.
had she got both her ovaries removed and then, a surrogate, she still have her child, she'd still be here. But the choice to, keep an ovary,
That's
negatively,
what I was saying
yeah,
before.
so
I was like, I wish we got more of that conflict, that internal conflict.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like that would have been interesting.
yeah.
And we didn't. We didn't get
So
that. So overall, what were your thoughts about this film?
I loved it. I'd recommend it to anybody to watch it, like regardless of whatever. Like it's a beautiful picture. Um, it might be up there for an Oscar nom for something, maybe, hopefully, potentially. My only issue with it is, to me, it's not really a comedy. Like I hate the fact that it was booked as a romantic comedy drama. To me, it's more so of just a drama in general with like romance and comedy elements, but it is what it is. Like Hollywood has this weird box they try to fit every single film in, even though a lot of films don't really fit in a certain genre. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I think this is a really good movie, but kind of mainly because of the performances.
yeah.
I think that I don't know, sometimes there can be like this temptation to talk about like heavy topics and think just because you're talking about the heavy topics that automatically makes your film like a serious film,
Mm,
where I just don't think that's true. I feel like if you're gonna talk about serious topics, then you still have to do it well. I'm not saying that this was done poorly at all. I'm just saying like um I think that there is like it's incumbent upon you as a filmmaker to like make sure that it's not just like, oh, it's like we're gonna talk about heavy stuff and then maybe not get into all the minutia of it because I do think that, like we were mentioning earlier, there was a big spot in or a couple spots where it's like we could have gone deeper with this because it brings up this serious topic brings up a lot of difficult questions that I
yeah.
think even if you don't have the answers for, you still want to explore that. So that was my only thing with the film. But overall, I do think that like Florence and Andrew are spectacular together, and I'm really happy that this was not only a great experience, but also therapeutic and just like an all around like great thing for both of them to be able to do. And I hope to see them in more things, actually. I would love to see them in like other films together. I think they have like an amazing kind of back and forth, an
Yeah.
amazing kind of connection. So that would be fantastic to see. And yeah, when it comes to the Oscars and stuff this year, maybe we'll talk about it in like a later episode down the road, but like this year has been interesting. I'll just say that. I don't know if this will get anything or not. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about a lot of the films that we saw this year. What's going to be up there? I think this year is going to be like a real toss up. I'm going to be surprised by like what's going to show up there when it comes time for like nominations for awards. But I do think that they were fantastic. So if they got something in any category in any award show, like that would be warranted because they were great. So
Mm,
I would say see it just for them. And yeah.
yeah. And also, yeah, props also Nick Payne. Um, like jumping into like the world of like film entirely. Like he's made his career mostly on theater. This is like a sixth like picture he's been as a screenwriter. I think this is the first one of him just, I think, solo by himself. But yeah, he has a wonderful career ahead of him. And it also makes sense being a mostly a theater guy why certain elements, things, certain things we were missing from this film weren't in there. So,
Mm,
but yeah.
yeah.
Um, but moving on to the news. Um, So, how should we segue this? Well,
You could just say it, yeah.
Armie Hammer, you know, has announced he's starting a podcast as his potential return to the film industry. The podcast is called the Armie Hammer Hammer Time Podcast. A really corny name, and he's basically using the podcast as his a personal diary and giving insights to what had happened and what is still currently happening to him in regards to his career and his downfall.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about this.
Mhm.
I think I'm going on a personal journey of just like understanding that one, people can't really be canceled, and then two, do we care or give space to people to like grow and change? And then three, has Armie Hammer done any of those things?
Mhm.
I don't know. It kind of seems like he is in this spot of like, I think for him, he still feels personally wronged by like everything that happened, and that like he didn't really do anything wrong. And so I don't know if I can give space for him to be rehabilitated if like the first step of accountability is not taken.
Yeah.
So I don't really know about him and what he's doing. Like I think it was inevitable that he would come back in some kind of way, like just because he is a white man in Hollywood. Like so of course, like of course he's gonna have a second act.
Mhm.
But yeah, if this is just gonna be him like airing out his grievances on how Hollywood turned their backs on him because not because he was talking about being a cannibal, but mainly because he was abusing women. I'm like I don't know what to say about that other than I won't be listening.
Yeah. It's weird because when these cases come up, because I know the the LADA did not indict him for
Yeah.
what's happening because insufficient evidence. But that doesn't mean he was not guilty. That
Right.
also when these things happen and these cases are also settled out of court with the victims, it doesn't mean they're innocent either.
Hmm.
So, when people say, "Oh, he didn't go to court. He was found not guilty." Yeah, he said all the court. You know, so it is what it is. But I think his issue with it also is I think the fact that he kind of when this shit happened, he kind of just went off the radar and was hoping that after everything died down, he somehow get a return to have his film career, and that hasn't happened. And I also think the part of the issue for him as well is he comes from like old Hollywood money. And this case never really revealed that he came from old money before. Like his great grandfather is like old, like oil magnate type shit. Like the boy is good, whether he was acting in Hollywood or not. But
Hmm.
I do think his overall issue with this is I think more so like we said before with We Live in Time, the issue is what legacy are you building for yourself? Beyond that, I think his overall issue is he was building a legacy for himself apart from his family in Hollywood, and that got taken away from him. So I can understand his resentment and anger towards it, but that also doesn't mean that he's 100% innocent in this situation either.
Yeah, it's like, yes, you're angry, but also you did this. Well,
Yeah.
allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly you did this. Like, I don't know. Even if you weren't like doing what was described, even though I think that he did,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do too.
um, like you were still cheating on your wife, like you were still being terrible. So
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna have that much sympathy for you just because like I mean, I have sympathy to the degree of like cycles of abuse. Like there's been multiple documentaries about him and his family and like the mess that went on there. So
Yeah.
like I get that you didn't grow up in the best situation. And so and I think he might have been abused. I think that he said that he was abused.
Mhm.
at a young age. So like I have sympathy up to the point of like, yes, cycles of abuse are real and like I'm sorry you had to go through that. But also like we have to take accountability for
Uh,
like what we are doing
as an adult, yeah, at a certain
as an
point, it's
adult.
it's your fault. You gotta deal with the consequences of your
You
actions.
have to like I personally don't believe that all these women are just being like, yeah, he was awful to me. Like for money because like to be honest, I actually don't know how much money he was making before all this happened, but
Mm,
I don't think it was a lot. Maybe his family money, maybe that could be something, but I also don't think that people necessarily go after people for money. That's like a huge thing that people always spout, like whenever someone has is accusing anyone of anything. It's like, well, they're rich, so they went after them for their money. I personally don't believe that victims do that. Like I know I'm sure some do, but like I don't believe that that's the case for everyone. So I'm I'm just gonna leave that there.
yeah.
Like if people want to tune in, fine. The podcast doesn't seem that interesting. It seems like he is just talking about his experience and then like bring a guest on to talk about one thing he doesn't know how to do and they're going to teach him how to do it. Like people think making podcasts are easy. Like
That shit's hard.
it's hard. You're going to run out of material by
Yeah,
episode like 5.
yeah,
So
yeah,
good luck. Good
yeah.
luck, Charlie.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going to move on. And we're going to talk about other people in Hollywood being awful. So Sony's Tony Vinciquerra commented, committed a major industry faux pas when he blamed union woe pay rises for so many productions moving to cheaper locations abroad. And yet, from the reporters' conversations, his statements reflect a pervasive sentiment among executives. So, Dale, why don't you just lay the groundwork for what is
All
going
right,
on?
so this was reported by Puck. I think Puck is probably one of the more better news Hollywood industry articles. A lot of their stuff is reported before it gets disseminated to everybody else. But this is reported by them, and when the reporter or the journalist spoke to him, this is Matthew Belloni, um, he asked him about SAG leadership and all this stuff. When he asked SAG leadership, they said they weren't surprised that the CEO of Sony didn't learn from last year's lesson for it's wrong for CEOs to take lavish trips and get major pay raises, then criticize their workers. And this is from Duncan Crabtree Ireland, who is the SAG-AFTRA union executive director. And he is kind of right because when the article goes to further describe the rates that screenwriters would now be making for a feature script treatment. Their minimum goes from about 160,000 from spring to 170,000 to next year, which is a 7% increase. And then they get added pension increase and they get added 11% healthcare, which goes to 12 next year, and then just a half percent of parental leave. All this help goes to help the union. So the cost for a script goes to about almost 113,000 off the rip, but also wiggle room for writers to negotiate from that point on, which I think everybody in the writer we all agree, which is great. For that's what unions are for, to
Hmm.
get their membership the best option they can. But this also shows as to why there's so many more films being shot with A, smaller budgets, A, limited releases, and B, being filmed overseas. The article goes to mention perfectly, like we've talked about this before during the strikes and stuff, to why a lot of the overseas productions were still going on. Like Game of Thrones was still shooting during SAG-AFTRA stuff. A lot of the stuff that was shot being done in England was still continuing. The article even goes to say, like in UK, like what most people don't know is when these films are filming on location, they mostly go to budget friendly locations. I know Atlanta and Georgia give film rebates. Of course, everybody knows Vancouver is usually a substitute for New York. A lot of if the movie is shot in New York, it's usually set in Atlanta or in Vancouver, point blank period, or sometimes they go to Chicago because they give good rebates. The article goes on to say, and most European places like the UK offer almost 30% rebates on what's spent to film there. So that goes, okay, I can spend less money, I can get a return from shooting it overseas, and if I shoot less, I can pay these writers and also below the line people a lot less. And we're seeing that trickle not just from writing, but also we see it in animation now and stuff like that, where discussions over AI are still taking place. So
Yeah, it's just like I was saying to you before we started recording, it is always that way where it's like these executives, these people who have amassed all this wealth are just going to find other ways to like continue to make their money. Like they don't care about, I don't know, like the fact that there was a months long strike that like grinded their entire industry to a halt, like, and all the fallout and damage and money loss that came out from that. Like they're not, it's like it's not penetrating their brains. Like they truly just cannot get around the fact that like for some reason they who don't do like the actual work that all of these workers are doing, like the actual artistry that it takes to make movies, they're not doing any of that.
yeah,
They're sitting in an office and like saying yes or no, making terrible decisions, spending buttloads of money on movies that are not good and
yeah.
that loses money. Like that's all they do all day. And then they still expect to be paid more than like everybody else who's working on the it's just so
It's not even that expect to be paid more. They lay off people. This is like not even we're not even, at this point we're not even talking about Hollywood. This is like economy all over. They
this is
lay off
capitalism.
capitalism. They lay off people to save millions and millions of dollars, and then
Mhm.
these same CEOs, oh, those millions of dollars we saved, guess who's getting bonuses, guys? Is that kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
also in sports when people like complain about athletes, not going to training camp and shit like that because they want more money on their contract. And they complain, oh, they're rich. Why do they care? Yes, but the multi-billionaire owner of the team is making money off the backs of these athletes who, football, you have CET, they die, they get concussions, all that stuff. They don't get, you have older players from like 70s and 80s begging for like proper health care and shit like that and barely getting pennies. Like the people who make the money for these industries are barely getting covered. It's the guys who sit at the top who do nothing, whose job is just to make sure everybody else at the top gets paid first. So.
Right. It's disgusting and it's gross and I hate it. And I hate it because it's like we need to find another way, like another system.
Yeah.
And like who's doing the work on that? Like that's what I need to know. Like what are we gonna hold these bozos accountable? Like it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm pissed.
Moving on from that, so there's current schism like talking about shitty CEOs and industry bullshittery from studios and shit like that. So word is that potentially Juror Number Two, latest Clint Eastwood film, starring Nicholas Hoult, might potentially be his last film. It did have its premiere at AFI, which is of course one of the film festival in LA. Been going on for almost 40 years. To rave reviews. Um, it's also coincidentally his fourth time he's premiered a picture there. He premieres his picture there. Even though it's his 40th directorial picture. But the issue is Warner Brothers 4 days later after the premiere are kind of limiting the film. They've only planned to put this film out to limited release for 50 theaters, with no other plans to expand to more locations in the next couple weeks. Um, uh, they were even discussing when location counts are being selected. They kind of course, picked for New York about a couple in LA and one in Chicago, like just the most popular cities in like one or two locations, which sucks. I mean, and the thing is, the article goes on to say while most indie pictures never expand, beyond that, this picture isn't really an independent picture. It's backed by Warner Brothers.
Hmm.
And it's also not even being considered into their for your consideration run for the award season either. Um, and I think one of the concerns they had was the fact that this Clint Eastwood's movies don't win awards, even though they're nominated, which I don't think should equate into whether a movie makes money or not. Because getting nominated is just as hard as winning one. So but I don't know, especially considering this movie also shot for a budget of like 33 million, I'm guessing. So not 30, yeah, 33 million. So it makes no sense. We have bullshit like Joker 3 costing like almost 200 million and only making back barely even make breaking even. So it's yeah, Warner Brothers, yeah. Hmm.
It always comes back to that, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Like Warner Brothers, okay. It's
yeah,
like here we are again.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so I thought that this movie was coming out next year, actually. I didn't even know that it was coming out this year until I saw photos of Zoe Deutsch like at the premiere. I was like, what? Because I saw the trailer when I was watching We Live in Time, and I was
yeah,
like, oh, this movie looks interesting. I mean, I don't like Clint Eastwood, but I
yeah,
was like, I might go see that
yeah.
when it comes out next year. And the movie literally is coming out very soon. So it's like, I didn't know that. And I think that there has been severe issues when it comes to marketing, like in terms of I mean, especially Warner Brothers, like they're particularly bad at it. I think Barbie was like one of like the exceptions where they like got it right.
Yeah.
Um, is Dune with still with Warner Brothers? I don't even know, but like I'm not even gonna put that to marketing. I'm putting that to the actors. Like they were the draw for that for me. Um, but like I just feel like why are we like not letting people know when these films are coming out and then only putting them in very select theaters? Like it I get that you have your kind of standard of like what you think will absolutely make money and you're going to put a lot of stake in that. Like you thought the Joker was going to make a lot of money, you thought that Furiosa was going to give you a lot of bucks, so you put a lot of that money aside for those projects. But I also feel like you still need your mid-budget movie, and I feel like before we throw it on streaming, like let's just see how it does. It might actually do well. Like I don't know, because to me, it's like if independent movies can still do well and carry its weight in the box office, and like so can mid-budget movies. Like we don't just have to throw it on Netflix. Like we could actually take some time and invest in it.
Yeah.
And then also with the award season stuff, it's like y'all don't deserve anything. Like Warner Brothers, you don't deserve a single thing. But for the sake of the actors and people who worked on the movie, um, awards consideration isn't just about prestige for your studio, it's letting people be aware that these projects even exist. Like that is what award consideration does. It boosts the profile of these films. So like wouldn't you want that? Couldn't that also lead to more funds if people knew about this movie? Like it's just I don't understand the decisions that are being made.
And the thing also, the other big issue with this is this also goes back to whether he's acting or directing, because other people don't know Clint Eastwood has like actually a really long directorial history from like going back to the 70s with Dirty Harry and stuff. Not even Dirty Harry, like Sudden Impact. He acted it and directed it and produced it. Like he has a long, with just Warner Brothers, almost a 50-year history of working with them
Hmm.
in different capacities. So that's also a giant shift. This is a reliable talent you guys have had in your pocket that you're now basically showing the door, like saying we don't care about you at all.
Mm.
So, and that I think that's also another issue in Hollywood, as mentioned. Like it's the closing the door of your long established working partnerships. Like even uh Mr. Nolan's mentioned it with Warner Brothers. Like I've been
Yeah.
working with them for years, and I'm kind of fed up with the BS. I'm gonna go take this Netflix money and work on this project and do whatever I want. So,
Smart.
yeah,
He's a smart man.
you
Anyway, so let's talk about what or if anything that we've been watching this week.
Me, of course, I've mentioned my passion for motorsports frequently on this channel. But I rewatched the Senate documentary, in lieu or in preparation for a also the Brazilian GP is like next week. Um, but also because Netflix does is now going is about to release, sorry, limited series based on his life. So I just went back to rewatch the original first documentary about him. But yeah, amazing driver, passionate race car driver, and probably one of them, I guess, less known in North America. But yeah, I'm can't wait for to see what Netflix's limited series looks like. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, I watched a documentary about the Beatles on YouTube. Just because like I was listening to these girls talk, I listened to this podcast with these two girls from Canada talk about like random history stuff.
Mhm.
And history, I'm putting in many like averted commas because like they do talk about history, but also they're just talking, like they're just talking.
Yeah.
And it is funny to watch. So I'm watching and listening to them talking about like they had this multi-series um yeah, they had this multi-series saga on the Beatles. And I'm not a huge Beatles fan. Like I know some of their songs, but they're not like my A1. Like I respect their songwriting talent and whatever, but
Yeah.
also they're problematic as hell.
Oh
So
yeah, of course.
I I side eye them all the time. So I'm not like a huge fan, but there is like so much stuff that went on between them and like between Yoko Ono. Like there's just a lot there. So I was listening and I was like, I was just bored and I was like, I guess I'll just watch like what the heck they did, like an actual historical like account of like what they actually did. Because I wanted to rewatch Moon Age Daydream because it's on
Mm-hmm.
HBO. And I
Mm-hmm.
still think I am because I miss David Bowie, who is also problematic, but I didn't realize that until I was listening to the podcast. Still love him though. He will be my problematic fave. I don't care. He's still my number one. But like, um, I was like, yeah, I want to watch this, but I can't remember anything about it. I think I really liked it, but there were also just moments where nothing was happening. So I'm gonna watch this other documentary.
Yeah.
And I watched that. And it's interesting how people who are like close to them very much gloss over the stuff that they
Oh,
did.
oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, when they were recounting a series of events. It's like, yeah, they were talking about like especially towards the end of the Beatles, like when they were like about to break up,
Mm-hmm.
and they were saying that oh, it was really cool that John Lennon like staged those sleep-ins for peace or whatever with Yoko Ono and like was making, give peace a chance. And it's like, yes, and he was severely addicted to heroin. Like we're not talking about like that piece of it, which is like, because like why would you who does this? This is kind of I mean, it is making a statement, but it's also just like it's not really helping the
Yeah.
cause in terms of the Vietnam War. Like you're just laying in bed with your wife, like you're not doing anything. So it's very anyways, it was just funny to watch because it was like we're not talking about like all of the other stuff like that's underpinning what's happening. But I think I like the documentary because they were connecting like what was happening socially
Mm-hmm.
not only in England but also in America around
Yeah.
the time when they were making music. So I was like, yeah, this is interesting. So I liked
Yeah.
it, but it was just like,
Like I think the Beatles are like one of the few, regardless of their bullshit, they're like their music kind of evolved a lot based on those decades as to what happening. And yeah, like you mentioned Moonage Daydream. I think the one film I like with Beatles music is Strawberry Fields. Not Strawberry
oh,
Fields. That's the name of the
that's their album. Yeah.
not the album. There's a movie and it mentions Strawberry Fields, but dang it, I forgot the name of the movie. Whatever, but it features the Beatles music, kind of like
Oh,
Forrest.
yesterday.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Not no, not yesterday. It's another one. It's another one.
Oh,
I
okay. Well,
forgot the
I don't
name of it.
know.
But no, but it much like how Forrest Gump depicts Forrest Gump evolve like his involvement in historic events, it reflects Beatles music through the eras and as a change,
Oh, that's cool.
using the music as kind of the soundtrack of the project. Um, and my favorite Beatles tidbit is, Paul McCartney being pissed off at Michael Jackson and no longer being friends with him once Michael bought the Beatles masters.
Oh,
And
yeah, that
and
did
and
happen.
and when Paul's like, so can we get like a little bump? And Michael Jackson's like, no. And that's what dissolved their friendship because Paul McCartney is the one that put the idea in his head of Michael Jackson having money and should buy masters and stuff like that. And Michael's like, yeah, no, I'm not paying y'all more. That's hilarious to me.
That's
That's
crazy.
hilarious.
That's
That's
not
hilarious.
good. Cause they, yeah, I remember because they were from. I love that song that they did. Say what
Say.
you want.
Yeah.
But that was my jam. That's my track right there. But I did forget they did have a falling out because he literally bought their masters. That man, untrustworthy. Like they were projecting it way before time. Like he is not to be trusted. And I think, anyways, that's a whole other discussion about Michael Jackson. That's a whole other thing. They are making a movie about him though.
Yeah.
So
With I think his nephew is playing him in the movie. So
anyway,
don't be casting people Sandler members them in movies. Don't do that.
yeah, you're setting yourself up.
Don't do that. Not even setting yourself up for failure. You can't give an accurate
That's what I mean.
portrayal. Yeah, you can't give an accurate portrayal of what this person could be like because you know them from only a certain perspective.
Right.
So, yeah.
Did you see the VH1 Michael Jackson? What is it called? Man in the Mirror with that guy from
Felix Alexander.
Felix. Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yo, I remember watching that when I was a child. I was like, why does this man look so crusty? Like they
They did it again. They did another one, and they had, I think it was a couple years after that, where Ray Fiennes was playing Michael Jackson and Elizabeth Taylor, and it's like after I think I don't even know. They're on like a road trip, and it was horrible.
We have to stop it. Anyways,
Anyway,
completely sidetracked. But yeah, so anyways, that's it from us. But the election is just a couple more days away. So if you haven't early voted yet, make sure that you do. Make sure you check out what your early voting deadlines are. And if you can't early vote for some reason, just make sure to show up at the polls on November. It's the 5th.
election is the 5th. And
November 5th.
I would also say, after last time Agent Orange won, prioritize your mental health like the day of an election night. Prioritize them. If you're a person who can't like deal with that shit, like I couldn't when he was elected, prepare yourself and just have a safety net or a way of not being inundated with potentially bad news. So
Yeah. Look after your friends. Contact your friends.
it seems like a joke, but
no, but I'm so serious.
yeah.
I could be more serious.
So yeah.
All right. So before I get depressed, let's wrap this up. Thanks guys again for listening. Check out all of our social media. Support us if you can, and we will see you guys in the. Oh, we're taking a break next week, so we'll see you guys in the episode after that. Yes.
Goodbye. Au revoir.